Now, time for the Gillette pressure rankings.
For me, it was a self-imposed pressure.
Was I under pressure? No.
Yeah, they're under pressure. Everyone's under pressure.
OTB AM's pressure rankings with Gillette.
And the big pressure.
It is a time in global history, Owen, where so many people have been under so much pressure. Normally we have a top three. We couldn't make a top three this week. We've got a top five.
It's incredible. Everybody is feeling the heat a little bit. I think every situation kind of comes with this existential pressure that we all have, and that has manifested itself this week in our Gillette pressure rankings, I should say. Where will we start with the NFL?
Let's go. Yeah.
So Odell Beckham Jr. Has done an interview with Wall Street Journal. Not that another interview is needed or anything like that to kind of intensify the situation for the NFL, but this is the latest piece of big news that we have. It was an interview that was done a few weeks ago by all accounts, so perhaps his opinion on things isn't quite up to date, but what he's saying that everything that's going on, it doesn't make any sense why we're trying to do this. And he's talking about the NFL coming back to play. His people have been contacted by various media organizations around the United States, and there's no sign that he is going to opt out, as a lot of players have, from the upcoming NFL season. But in this interview, he says, we're not ready for the football season. Why are we trying to push forward? It's obviously for the money. And that bothers me because there's always been this, and I hate saying this, but the owner's attitude is, oh, we own you guys, and just kind of that unfairness going on that they don't see us as human. I just feel that the season shouldn't happen, and I'm prepared for it to not happen, and I wouldn't mind not having it. So it's going to be a big week. Thursday, 4 o'clock in New York. New York time is the deadline for players to opt out for the season ahead. Currently, it looks like it's going to be fine. It is still been a bit of a disaster for the NFL in terms of any opt-outs. You don't want any player to opt out. You've got the Patriots who've been absolutely ravaged by opt-outs at this point. 5 different players have opted out. Same with the Detroit Lions, who put 5 players on the reserve/COVID-19 list last week. And then you had the Eagles head coach, Doug Peterson, who's tested positive as well. So all these things are trickling through. Whether or not there's going to be enough come Thursday for the NFL to put a pin in the whole season, I'm not quite sure. But still, given the amount of money on the line, it is quite the week that the NFL face this week if you've got people like OBJ coming out saying this sort of thing.
I can't see... Well, look, okay, there's no point in making predictions because the way that America has handled the entire thing has not been good so far. I think we can all agree that there were a million different things that they could have done that would be better than the outcome that they've had. So there is a possibility that there is no season. That's definitely on the table in a way that it shouldn't be. There should have been ways that they could have decided that something will happen. My instinct is that it'll be a shortened season, that we'll see, and the way they've designed everything, that season can telescope quite significantly. It can also roll on into February and March next year if it needs to be. Next February, for example, the Super Bowl is due to be in Tampa. There are no other bookings, or else they've got that whole thing booked for the whole month. So they can push back the Super Bowl, and there's always a 2-week break before the Super Bowl anyway. So there's loads of different ways that they can telescope the season from a 16 game to a 14 game to a 12 game to a 10 game to an 8 game season if they need to, and then have a curtailed playoff. So I expect that there will be some games played, and that might involve some teams pulling out because they can't field, or games being postponed, or win percentage being the thing that actually dictates who qualifies for the playoffs. But so you mentioned the Patriots. It's actually 8. 8 Patriots have already opted out, and there's still time. The NFL had this deadline of the following week to give players the opportunity to opt out, and then players started to take them up on it, and they're like, hang on a second, we're going to move this deadline forward just in case anybody was thinking about this. Whoosh, pull it forward really quick. So I think the next 24, 48 hours are going to be critical to see if they're going to have the superstars that they need. So far, no quarterbacks, which obviously is the kind of key thing. And if there are going to be quarterbacks who are starting to opt out, we'll wait and see. So putting somebody on the COVID-19 list just means that they or somebody close to them have tested positive, and if they make a full recovery, they'll be grand to go back into general circulation within 14 days. So I think we're going to see American football. I don't know how many and how often we're going to see it, but they are certainly under pressure. Roger Goodell is going to earn his massive $50 million a year pay packet or whatever it is over the next couple of months.
For sure. The next on our list of our pressure rankings today, and at number 2, is Ronnie O'Sullivan. I'll talk about this for pressure. This is self-made pressure here. He obviously won a ranking event aged 17, and he was speaking about being a bit of a wunderkind on BBC Radio 5 Live over the course of the weekend. And he says, I've had that expectation level from the age of 10 or 11 that I was going to be champion one day. In many ways, it is like Prince William groomed to be king one day. As a youngster, I've learned to playing under pressure in amateur and professional ranks, so I don't see it as there being pressure, but something you learn how to handle. The boy who would be king.
King Ronnie.
In the Crucible. King Ronnie. You'd absolutely think that he would do a phenomenal job as king of the United Kingdom, you would think. But like, that is... like, it's not actually something that you hear him talk about too often. If anything, you think with Ronnie O'Sullivan that it's like water off a duck's back, that the idea of pressure isn't something that Ronnie O'Sullivan is even familiar with. If anything, he's just sick of people putting him on a pedestal, sick of everybody wanting him to try his hardest over the last few years. He was obviously in unbelievable form over the course of the weekend, winning in 108 minutes, quickest ever win in the World Championship. Like, this is something that obviously has been part of his life for such a long time, where you realise before you're old enough to know what to do it yourself, you realise this is where your destiny lies, that you have to become a world champion. Everybody knows that is what it's going to be. And that is quite a level of pressure to be like, comparing it to being groomed to like a prince.
Well, it is. Sean Murphy did an interview last week with David Kelly in the Irish Independent, where he was saying that Ronnie O'Sullivan was born rich. He's one of the few independently wealthy. Now, I didn't know this. The only story I knew about Ronnie's background was his father being in prison in Thailand. So there is an interesting backstory there that I was completely unaware of, that actually he was born into a wealthy family, and this whole kind of notion of him being a working class kid made good. That's the rest of them in the world of snooker who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. But Ronnie kind of had born with a silver spoon, was the implication from Sean Murphy. So maybe he is a bit more like being born a prince than we thought. Yeah,
possibly. Next up, we've got Rory McIlroy, USPGA Championship week this week. 6 years this week, actually, since his last major win, and obviously all season he's flip-flopped a bit, probably. He had a microcosm last week, good round on Friday, shot a 73 on Saturday, finished 47th. Obviously, he's been knocked off #1 spot in the last month and a bit. And I think Rory McIlroy has a knack of putting a severe level of pressure on himself. Like, he's been speaking, doing media in the build-up to the USPGA, and he says, because of all that's happened this year, it has made me focus a little more on just these 3 weeks, on just these weeks that are coming up. Everything was normal, and then we had a massive gap where I had time to think, okay, what are you looking forward to after this break? It's a funny year, but I have 3 opportunities from now until November to add to my major tally. Those were the 3, even in quarantine, I was looking towards. Once the schedule was set, it was those 3 events I was trying to get ready for. So, not that you needed to put any added focus on these things, considering we have this thing with Rory McIlroy now, where once it comes to major week, the scrutiny is just unbelievably intensified on the guy. It was so intense last year at Royal Portrush, and he crumbled on the opening day. Obviously, the story on Friday was almost fairy tale-esque, where that making that cut would have been incredible. Didn't happen for him, but it hasn't helped. The fact of the matter is, he had a disaster last week in the last major that was played, and now he's talking about it again, saying, well, these are 3 events, these are the 3 that I care about, and that's it. So to say that he's heaped more pressure on himself is a bit of an understatement in this case. And like, from the very first ball that he strikes on Thursday, it'll be all eyes on Rory to see, will he choke again like he did last year? And he says that he didn't choke in Portrush last year, but I think that's probably a matter of opinion from our perspective looking on.
Yeah, well, they never admit that they choked. That it's like a massive dirty word, because if you do it once, then there's every chance you'll do it again. But like, he's clearly choked on several occasions and come back from it generally really well. Like, remember that time he discovered the house in Augusta that we didn't even know existed? He was so far off course. Like, what? This is a part of the course we've never seen. We've been watching this tournament for 40 years in colour TV, and hang on a second, what? There's a little house? How did he get there? When it looked like, he was going to win. Rory McIlroy's psychology is the type of thing that several PhD students will be awarded doctorates, and they will come to rival and conflicting accounts of what they think makes up Rory's makeup, because he's endlessly fascinating when it comes to when he's on, how he got on, and what turned him into this unstoppable juggernaut. And then when he's off, he's so far off that it's like, how did that happen? How can you do this? Like, when there's no obvious technical flaws. So, look, I don't know. I think until Rory wins another major, that time frame is going to be the thing that weighs on him so heavily. That would you be terribly surprised if he never won another major?
Yes,
you would be,
because of I would be, because of the talent.
But look at the competition that has emerged over the last 3 or 4 years. Like, when he was coming through, it was like there's 3 or 4 other players who are like behind him, and so far behind him that we know that he'll crush them when he's on. But since then, there's just been this kind of, like mushrooms, a bunch of players who could dominate the game and who are absolutely stunning. Like, John Ram is really good. We have a new number 1 this week who just took over from John Ram, because there are players who are really good, who are in form, and who are capable of doing whatever Rory can do. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't be terribly surprised if that was it. And that's still an amazing career that he's had.
Well, without question, and he will still go down as Ireland's greatest ever golfer, no matter what happens next. But there's just such a time frame here for him to still win another major. The way he looks after himself would suggest that he can go until he's 40 to actually be in contention, at least, whenever the majors roll around, at the very minimum. And you talk about the mushrooming of talent, and it is true. Like, I mean, the PGA Tour is certainly, in my lifetime, at its most entertaining right now, where every week, you're going to get an absolutely quality field on the final day who are in contention, no questions asked about that. But then again, it is just the nature of the sport, where people tend to flip-flop away from being at their very best. And how can you be at your very best at a sport with such fine margins? Like, I mean, even the Brooks Koepka situation over the last couple of years, where he's managed to get himself right for just the majors, is remarkable. To be able to do that on the PGA Tour, to win FedEx Cups as well as being in contention for all the majors, is nigh on impossible. At the same time, he's been heralded for being one of Ireland's most talented sports people ever. So when you've got that level of talent, is 6 years a really long time to go without a major win? It probably is. And he has put himself into the mix, relatively speaking, a couple of times since then. But like, you look at someone like Jordan Spieth, who has blown hot and cold since we thought he was going to dominate the game. Like, you come back to Koepka and you wonder how sustainable is his form going to be into the future. Like, Justin Thomas is obviously world number 1 at this point. He's been going steady, and we still need to see John Ram and Bryson DeChambeau step up. So there are a range of different options where majors can go over the next little while, and it is bigger than, say, we would have previously known. But then at the same time, you're kind of looking back on the Tiger era, when maybe the field was stacked. Maybe the field would have been really competitive if Tiger Woods didn't exist on a couple of occasions as well. So I would be surprised if he didn't win one. But certainly the pressure on Rory this week.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's move on to the next one. I'm going for Brentford here. Like, you could make an argument that the pressure's on Fulham tonight, but I'm going to put it on Brentford. Naturally, just being in the situation where there's £160 million in the line is a fairly pressure-filled scenario. But if they fail to win, Brentford will have taken part in more unsuccessful playoff campaigns in the English Football League than any other club. This is their 9th attempt. Now, they've had a great campaign. They're actually their best campaign since suffering relegation from the top flight in 1946-47. That was when they last got relegated from the top flight. And they also have a new stadium that they're ready to move into. These are all a lot of factors pointing to the fact that Brentford kind of need to win tonight. They kind of need to get back up to the top. Like, Thomas Frank has come out to try and alleviate that a little bit. He's called Fulham a bigger club than us. This is not a mind game. This is a fact, he said. They got relegated from the Premier League last year and have the parachute money. So I wonder, in a little way, he's saying there, they've got the parachute money, so they will be okay to have another tilt at it next year. Certainly it helps to have the parachute money to go at it again after a playoff loss. Are Brentford, kind of the way the season has gone, are they looking a little bit ruefully at missing out on that automatic promotion place and thinking to themselves, we better get this done today? I certainly think so, and I certainly think that if you're picking one of the two tonight, it's Brentford who are under the most pressure.
Well, look, I think you're right. I think that when you get that close to it, so frequently the team who finishes third doesn't actually end up winning the playoffs. But what did happen was that they lost that first playoff match in, not great scenario and managed to come back from it. So they've had their wobble, and I just think their story is a bit of a more interesting story than the Fulham one, which essentially Fulham have been a yo-yo club for 20 years at this point, and another couple of seasons of them being a yo-yo club, that's fine, who cares, it's only Fulham. But actually Brentford coming up is this remarkable data analysis, statistics, scouting, coaching. Like, it's a really, really interesting story, and I'm very interested to see how far that can actually go. It is something new for us to think about when it comes to Premier League, as opposed to, Scott Parker seems like seems like a good man, has built a good spirited team around Fulham, and I'd like to see him bring them up next season as champions.
Scott Parker wears a tie bar, which I haven't seen too many managers do. Like, we've often seen people suit up, it's commonplace. But actually going for the tie bar, is that too formal to be a Premier League manager almost?
What's on with the tie bar on?
I don't know, I've just never seen anybody wear it on the sideline. Is my point?
Are you in favour of tie bars? Or are you anti tie bars?
No, I'm just saying that I've just noticed this. Like, I mean, when you saw Jose Mourinho racing down the touchline as manager of Porto, the tie was flying in the air. But Scott Parker has taken formality to a whole new level, is what I'm saying.
Just, taking advantage of all of the available opportunities and the accoutrements of life. It's progressive, I would say.
What does it say about his management style is what I want to ask, but we don't have time for that really fascinating question.
Attention to detail.
Yeah, exactly. The final one in our pressure rankings today is going to be Inter Milan. Like, anybody that possesses the rights to Alexis Sanchez probably finds himself under a bit of pressure. Great news for Manchester United this week if the story does actually happen, that they've managed to offload his 350k a week salary. 4 goals, 8 assists in Serie A this season. Hasn't been very fit. So that kind of probably raises a few eyebrows for Inter Milan fans about why are we actually going to take on the huge salary of this guy. Now, there are reports from Gazzetta dello Sport that Sanchez has agreed to spread his £13.5 million salary over a 3-year deal at Inter, taking him through to June 2023. So that way they don't really need to pay him as much every single week. Still, I'm not sure that's actually something that a player would ever do. Like, I mean, like, if you take the Gareth Bale situation, nobody can blame Gareth Bale for sitting on the bench when that is the most amount of money you can possibly make. So maybe this thing doesn't happen, but if it does, you're looking at Inter Milan saying, responsibility's on you to ensure this thing works out.
I think that Manchester United are paying some of this as well. I think that this deal is going to end up being, there could be a 30 for 30 on Alexis Sanchez contracts from the time that he joined Arsenal to whenever he finishes football, and I would watch like a 10-part episode to see exactly who got paid when and how they managed to negotiate the various stages of the deal that they've negotiated. Because I think that one of the just piecing this together, the Inter deal, they're going to pay him his full whack for the first of the 3 years, and then years 2 and 3 will revert to something close to a normal salary. That was how one of the papers reported. I think it's essentially what you're saying is that they top load the first year, and then years 2 and 3 he essentially takes a pay cut. Somebody else was saying that perhaps Manchester United have actually paid up his existing contract to a certain level, which is enough for him to make the same amount of money that he would have made at Manchester United, and then get another year at the end at Inter. So it's not like he's taking a reduction. It's like a lump sum of cash from Manchester United to come off their books and buy him out of the 2 years. Inter paying him the same amount next year, which he would have been getting anyway. So it's like double his wages next year, really, or double his wages from whenever that deal is done, because he gets a lump sum. Maybe Manchester United pay him over the course of the season. So he's actually getting the Man United money, the Inter money, and then there's 2 years left at the end of it. I'm taking that deal if I'm Alexis Sanchez. Those 4 goals, that's like, that's 20 million quid for 4 goals.
But also the fact is that he is playing better football. Like, I will stress again, like, he has got 8 assists. Like, I'm just checking here, like, he in Serie A this season, he's only started 10 games. Now, he's come off the bench in 12 of them, which kind of points to maybe a situation where he's either not fully fit all the time or he's not in the starting plans all the time. It's all to do with the former, really. He just has been in and out of the team all year with injury. I don't think that's actually a bad tally. I think that if you're looking at it from a footballing perspective alone, Alexis Sanchez, it's not a bad tally, sorry, in the context of his career recently. He's looking at this saying, I'm playing better football and the manager likes me a bit more. And as you've pointed out there, actually, there's a chance of me earning the same amount of cash. It's a win-win-win-win-win from Alexis Sanchez's point of view. There is no way that he shouldn't be trying to make this happen.
Yeah, 100%. One last thing on this. Manchester United set themselves back by about 18 months to 2 years when they did this deal in the first place. It was a horrific deal. Agreeing to that amount of money being in his salary, what they could have done was paid him that in a signing bonus, but kept his wages lower than other people at the club so that it never got out that his wages were... The reported figure is actually 500 grand. Not the 350. That 350 is some kind of basic. And obviously he hasn't been playing to get the accelerators, but you've got to assume that they're paying him some of those accelerators to get him off the books. So, look, that was a catastrophic moment in the management of Manchester United that has had knock-on impact in them having to pay everybody else. Like, the contract that they were given, those kind of bit part players over the last 18 months where everybody was like, oh, this guy's actually, he's not bad, you know, he's starting to contribute, and then not contribute at all until the very last second of the season, as we've seen in one famous instance over the last 12 months. Those contracts did not do Manchester United any favours, and I think have prevented them from having the strength and depth they need to challenge next year. So knock-on impacts all around. That is this week's pressure rankings.